Gaily bedight, a gallant knight, in sunshine and in shadow, had journeyed long.
What's that all about?
Just a poem, one of Johnny Diamond's favorites. Let's see. Gaily bedight, a gallant knight, in sunshine and in shadow, had journeyed long, singing a song, in search of El Dorado.
Howdy everyone. Pull up a chair, kick up your boots, take a sip on a nice cold drink. It's El Dorado, the Season 3 of Support Your Local podcast, where we take a look at the 1966 John Wayne classic El Dorado, one chapter at a time. I'm your host as always, Robert Smith, coming to you from beautiful Tombstone. Yes, that one. Today we'll be taking a look at Chapter 10, Cleaning Up. We left off last chapter with Nelson McLeod and his gang coming out of the Just Saloon and hopping back on his horse. We cut over to the jail where Mississippi is totally not watching them from a crack in the shutters of the window, and we go inside and see him shut the window. Mississippi truly does not know how to use a gun because he's standing there with it broken open, and why is he holding it inside to start with? Question mark. He turns towards the back where we see Bull blowing on not his bugle, but in fact a harmonica. And more on that in just a second. But Mississippi only then closes his gun barrel. So maybe he was just loading it when he took a peek outside. I'm truly confused. If he's holding it to save time in case someone storms the jail, then why have it broken open? Question mark. But anywho, back to Bull blowing on a harmonica. I've done, I think, a pretty good job of not really throwing this movie under the bus of being a direct ripoff of Rio Bravo. For those that don't know, Rio Bravo came first. And it is also directed by Howard Hawks, and it also stars John Wayne. It also has a lady who is the widow of a gambler who becomes the Duke's lady. It also has a crotchety older guy as a deputy working the jail, and it also has a bright young up-and-coming movie star as one of the gang. It also has a drunk who has to sober up to help the Duke with a pending ambush when they clash with a land baron. Sound familiar? Again, I'm not knocking or bashing this movie because I truly love it just as well. I'm just saying that there's definitely some old-fashioned copy and paste going on. But Bull plays the harmonica in back is a direct correlation to Mr. Walter Brennan's Stumpy doing the exact same thing in Rio Bravo. Now, this movie has far fewer musical numbers mixed in, but we also have far fewer Dean Martin and Ricky Nelsons mixed in, to be fair, with an honorable mention to Walter Brennan for his chart-topping songs as well. When Mississippi tells Cole that Nels is leaving, Bull asks if he thinks he's pulling out of the whole ordeal, and Cole tells them that a man in his line of work can't pull out on a job once he's taken it, and I get what he's saying. Reputation was so important in the hired gun world that if it got out that he ditched jobs just because they became difficult, he wouldn't get asked to do too many jobs. Just look at Han Solo and Jabba the Hutt. But I did find it interesting that Cole would say this because, and this may be a bit of a gray area, but Cole Thornton is in the exact same line of work. And, depending on who you ask, I think it could be argued that Cole took the job that Bart Jason offered him, to settle this little land war. And, once Cole found out it was JP, he was the one that he needed to handle, he backed out of it. What do you think? Let me know. Hit me up in the comments. But, ever the Native American expert, Bull says that, They maybe are just putting the impression that they're leaving out there and that he is getting the itch on the back of his neck that there is. And these are his words, not mine. So please don't at me. Fat finger, quote marks, engine trouble. And I don't think he meant with his car. I'm just saying. Bull asks what time it is, and when Cole tells him probably midnight, Bull hops up to wake up the sheriff. And when asked why, Bull tells us that before the sheriff tried to drink the town dry, they used to do a patrol around this time, which, maybe they don't take shifts after all. Maybe it's just expected to be up 17 hours a day, ? But even so, as a former third shifter, I'm still not apologizing for calling Cole an asshole, just so you know. Cole voluntold Mississippi that they would go do the rounds and to let the sheriff sleep, which presumably Bull still hasn't had an opportunity from being woken up a couple chapters ago. So if he's in the secret Saw villain in this, I'm starting to sympathize with him. Bull tells them that if they're going to do that, then it might as well be official. So he pulls a couple star badges from the desk and he hands them to the two. He then asks them to raise their hands and, well, Bull forgot the words to the oath, but they better say I do, which they do. And I have questions, ... First, is a deputy given the authority to make other deputies? And second, how many of those badges do they just have lying around? Could they deputize everybody in the town? ? Third, while I'm still fuzzy on how exactly JP is still the sheriff of this town, and maybe it's just a matter of there hasn't been an election in the month or so that he's been drunk, this is still presumably a democratically elected or at least appointed position of sheriff. And he may have the authority to deputize whomever he may see fit. I get that. Much like a police chief can promote someone, I'm on board. However, don't they still have to answer to a budget? Presumably being a deputy is a paying job. I don't know if you'd want a bunch of volunteers going out there and shooting away at your constituents. So don't they have to answer to some sort of financial responsibilities before? After all, strange women lying in ponds distributing badges is no basis for a system of government. If I went around saying I was deputy just because some moistened bent lived a 10-star at me, well, they'd put me away. You're welcome, Sean. And last, since Bull is a duly empowered justice of the peace, and he did, not really specify which oath he was forgetting the words to, and they both did say I do, are Cole and Mississippi now the first known instance of gay marriage in cinema, all the way back in 1966? ? What say you? Cole unlocks the door, and as he's heading out, he turns back to Bull and says, you better lock this door behind us, which, what the fuck, dude? The door was literally just locked. Bull has been a deputy for a long time, and you, my friend, have been deputized all of 9 seconds. Who the hell do you think you are barking orders to the guy that swore you in? And especially shit that he's already going to do. Asshole. Now, Evil Bull has the perfect setup. The sheriff is asleep and alone with Bull. The other two are out there to potentially get ambushed, and per Cole's orders, the door is locked. It would be a shame if they were trying to get in the jail to avoid, getting shot, and, Bull just couldn't make it to the door in time, huh? Cole, ever the chicken, tells Mississippi to take a look inside Jason's, or as we call it, the Just Saloon, and that he would walk along the side, closest to the jail door and as far away from where the enemies in action were. I'm not saying he's dumb. I'm just calling him a coward. You heard it here first. The Duke is a coward. Come at me, bro. They walk along the boardwalk, and we see there's a bigger crowd in Jason's than earlier. There are people standing just inside the Batwing doors, so you would think the floor was full. There are several drunks sitting on the bench outside. And we cut over to the Duke walking the other side, and he passes two Mexican gentlemen having a conversation on the boardwalk. And the Duke juts his thumb out behind him to tell them to fuck off. But, at least he has the manners to say, con permiso, por favor, beforehand, which, always kind of bothered me. Like, I get that it's midnight and, maybe he doesn't want to have people loitering around in the streets at this time. But we literally just saw at least 5 white guys chilling on the other side of the street. Just saying. It's this newfound power in his badge is really starting to go to his head. And Mississippi passes by a shop window displaying various rifles and shotguns. And as he continues by, we see the door is wide open. So just how late does this gun shop stay open in El Dorado? As the Duke walks further on, we hear what sounds like a bird call from down the road, and Cole calls Mississippi over to him as the sound happens again. We hear a whooping and a hee-yah! And the Duke and Mississippi head behind some barrels as 4 riders come riding out of an alley right up ahead. And I'm hitting the trope alert. Whoop, whoop, whoop.
We'll head them off at the pass! Head them off at the pass? I hate that cliche.
As they come riding up to our 2 heroes, the riders start whooping some more and they're shooting their 6-shooters into the air. Why? This isn't just a rowdy bunch like the ones that James Garner tripped with the rope and Support Your Local Sheriff. They're not just shooting and whooping in excitement or partying. Why would you alert the people you're about to attack like that? More of that in just a second. As the riders approach, Mississippi can no longer take the stress of this constant violence in the Old West, and sadly he throws himself under the hooves of the horses. And now that Johnny Diamond has been avenged, he sadly has nothing left to live for, I guess. But no, never mind. He's okay. He does throw himself down on the street for the horses to hopefully jump over, is what he does. And we see a not as smooth transition to a dummy lying on the ground, and we actually see some of the hooves standing on top of the dummy from time to time. But as the riders pass over, the Duke finally takes a shot at the riders, and as does Mississippi from the ground. We see one of the riders go down, and as the Duke takes another shot, one more rider falls down with his horse. So I mentioned as Mississippi jumped under the horses that I'd revisit this. So as the riders did charge down the street whooping and such, they were seen holding their pistols in the air and shooting, much like the rowdy crowd we saw in season 1 with Support Your Local Sheriff, but we never actually see them shoot at either of our heroes. So is there a chance that Cole and Mississippi just murked these guys? Asking you. The sheriff comes trotting into the street, and yes, I literally mean trotting. Like, watch the scene and you'll see what I mean. And he starts blasting at the other 2 riders, and one of the 2 shoots out the leg of JP, but not before JP can return fire and take him out. So JP's drunken bloodlust has at least finally been partially satiated, but at what cost? The 4th rider escapes. As the Duke and Mississippi go running towards JP, they grab him under his arms, and the Duke hollers, "Get him inside!" We get a great shot of the front of the jail, and inside the now open front door, if you look quickly, you can see Bull's face poking out of the bars that lead back to the cells. So rational mind tells you that the sheriff must have told Bull to get back and guard Bart Jason as the sheriff goes and gets his bullets wet. But as I cannot let my conspiracy theory slide, this is a perfect scenario for Bull. All 3 of those guys are out there getting shot at, and he's back here locked in with his benefactor. Just saying. They get JP back in the jail. They lock the door and they sit him down on a chair, and Bull hollers from the bars, "Ain't someone going to tell me what happened out there?" Which, nice touch, making it seem like you don't know exactly what happened, Bull. Keep him off your trail. Wink. Mississippi tells JP he's going to have to cut his pant leg to get at the wound. And as JP is about to ask if he has a knife, Jim Kahn whips his hideout knife from his shirt collar that we saw earlier. And, this startles the sheriff, and he asks once again, "Who are you?" Bing! Put one on the scoreboard. This is where Cole tells Mississippi to tell the sheriff his name, and with astonishment, the sheriff replies, "No wonder you carry a knife." The sheriff asks Bull to sneak out the back door and get the doctor, which, I don't think I knew that there was a back door at this point. From the way the Bull is hiding, it appears to be right there where the back cells are. So wouldn't you want to attack that door instead of the front porch? It just seems like a weakness to their defenses. But speaking of weakness and defenses, Cole's telling JP what happened when he remembered to ask Mississippi what the hell he was thinking when jumping under those horses. And he replies that a man can't shoot when his horse is jumping, and a horse will not step on a man. And JP and Cole look at each other, almost laughing, and asks, "They won't?" And our poor dummy that replaced Mississippi in the street would also like to beg to differ. We dissolve to a little later. Bull's leaning against the chifforobe, and the sheriff is having his leg wound looked at by another man, while the doctor that we saw earlier in the movie is observing. The chloroform huffing doctor, as we like to call him, walks over to Cole, and he asks if he ever got the bullet in his back taken care of. When Cole tells him no, he introduces him to the other doctor that was tending to JP's leg. Apparently, he's a young upstart whippersnapper with the newfangled scientific mumbo-jumbo, or, in shorter words, he's good enough to remove the bullet if Cole would like. As the doctor comes over, there is amazing what-the-hell facial acting by Robert Mitchum. He's asked to use his own finger to hold the wound closed, while the doctor goes over to look at Cole's older and much closed wound. The sheriff starts to complain, saying, "Hey, Doc, mine's still bleeding." And the doctor tells Cole that if he doesn't get that fixed soon, the paralysis will continue, and it's going to get longer and longer episodes until it doesn't go away at all. Cole tells him that they're busy with all the stuff going on with Bart Jason, but when it's all over, he'll come see him. So with that settled, the sheriff asks nicely that the doctor come back over to him, as his finger is getting tired. And we dissolve to Bull looking out the window, then looking over and getting the attention of the Duke getting coffee. He points towards the sheriff, who's sitting in the chair at his desk, and JP is just fidgeting, rocking back and forth, going stir crazy. And Cole chastises him to settle down, and JP snaps back that he's got the shakes, a hole in his leg, and a whole hornet's nest outside ready to shoot him. It's fair. Cole asks him what he wants to do, quit? And JP sighs as if to say, "This motherfucker." No, all he can think to do is to not go outside and to hole up in the jail, like Rio Bravo. And Cole asks when the marshal will be in town, and JP doesn't remember the last time that he had been. Bull does, however, and apparently JP had greeted him by flinging an empty bottle at his head. And Bull figures he'll be back in town in about 4 to 5 days. And Cole wants to know if they have enough provisions to last that long inside the jail without going out. And they have enough coffee and oil for the lights, but not food. So JP asks if Bull can go get some without getting shot. And Mississippi asks if he should go too, and Bull replies, sure. If Bull gets shot, then Mississippi can bring back the food. While he's there at the store, he's going to get a bar of soap because someone in the jail might want to use it. He doesn't go so far as Stumpy does in Rio Bravo asking for soap that smells like roses, but it's definitely a callback. And the sheriff takes a look at himself and resigns that, he might use a bath, to which the Duke says that, he'd appreciate it. We dissolve to a shot of Robert Mitchum sitting inside an old-fashioned metal washing tub. And the Duke is behind him holding a water pitcher, so did we just miss a shot of John Wayne washing Robert Mitchum's hair? Because that's adorable. Joey McDonald is led in the front door by Bull, and she's carrying some clothes and a pair of crutches. And at the sight of her, JP starts to modestly cover up with his arms. But Joey reminds the sheriff that she was raised with 4 brothers, and the sheriff reminds her that he is not, in fact, her brother. Apparently, the doctor sent the crutches, and the McDonald's provide the clothes and a bar of soap, and she brought one as well. So it's nice to have friends that care about your hygiene, I suppose. Or, everyone who's been around him is excited that he's finally cleaning up a bit. She turns to Mississippi and gives him a very well, hello there, kind of hello. And he replies with a Josephine and a grin. So, love is in the air. The Duke wants to know what she's still doing in town, and we find out that they're taking her brother, who we find out is named Jared, by the way, home today, and that he's recovering very well. She tells Mississippi that he looks much better without that hat. It's just a hat. As she leaves, we hear Maudie holler to not shut the door, and she enters. And poor Bull is stuck just being a doorman at this point. Maudie's coming in with a picnic basket, and she says her hellos to everybody. The sheriff replies that he'd get more privacy in the El Paso rail station. And Maudie throws another bar of soap she brought for him, making our grand total 4 that I know of. She tries to enter the back cell section where JP is, asking what happened to his leg, and the sheriff goes full modesty on Maudie and Maudie, and he covers up. The Duke begins to chastise her for coming there after what happened last night, to which, if she didn't know about JP's leg, I'm not sure she knew what happened last night. She gets rightly offended, and she threatens to take the food back when Mississippi and the sheriff diffuse the situation and let her know that he's fumbling to tell you that it's not safe to be there while this whole thing is going on. And, if somebody saw her coming in, that they could get to her to get to them type thing. And when Bull mentions that maybe she could go out the back, the realization of what that would entail hits JP. He resigns and says, "Fine, I'll close my eyes." And he puts his hat on his head and covers his face like he's getting ready to play hide and seek. It's a nice little comedic beat. Maudie laughs as the Duke leads her through the jail and past the embarrassed JP and out. And we end our scene with JP sighing and a brief second of a lady running down the boardwalk towards, I think, the jail. But what happens next? Does any of that soap smell like roses? Will Cole be a good friend and scrub JP's back for him? Is Bart Jason creepily watching the bath from his cell? Find out this and more when we return next time with El Dorado. But until then, guys, as always, check us out on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Support Your Local Podcast. Please take the time to like and follow us there. And if you have a free moment, something that is absolutely free, but you can help me out a great deal with, is rating and reviewing us on whatever podcatcher you find us on. But until we meet again, folks, love you. And always, 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 please support your local podcast.
And when his strength failed him at length, he met a pilgrim shadow. "Shadow," said he, "where can it be? This land called El Dorado." Over the mountains of the moon, down the valley of the shadow. "Ride, boldly ride," the shade replied. "You search for El Dorado,